British Columbia, Canada. It's on the Pacific coast. Just below. My very first memory, I was 5. I was sitting up or standing up in a big crib with steel bars. And I was alone in a huge, empty room, other than another bed, a hospital bed I can see now. One, just one. And it was empty. And there was nothing on the wall. And the floors had no carpet. It was an institution of some kind. And I was sitting there feeling pretty lonely when a little boy, about maybe, I don't know, 6 to 10, 6 years old to 10. He was older than me, and I feel I was 5. I was 5. Because that's how old my mom said I was when I had a car accident. But he walked in with a bag of cheesies, and I knew I loved candy. So I just wanted a cheesy. And I asked him if I could have one. And he came over and slipped one cheesy through the bar. As soon as the cheesy touched my lips, I had conflicting feelings all over. First, the salt was a very painful experience on my lips, which I now know were stitched up. And so it was extremely painful, but at the same time, I felt joy. Joy to be there. And my next memory is waiting for my father to come over. I was living with my older brother, 2 years older than me, and mother in a small apartment complex in, I think, on the border of Burnaby and Coquitlam, British Columbia. It was called Parkwood Terrace. And there were low bungalow apartments. And there was sometimes 2 floors. And the kindergarten was on the property, as well as a little playground and a back alleyway where cars parked. So my next memory was of my father coming over. And when he came over, I felt he came over with my Uncle Hilliard, his brother. And when I saw them standing there, I just felt so much love for my dad and my uncle. They came in and they both seemed happy to see me. And they pretended, my uncle did. I think they both did it a lot when I was a little girl. But this first time, I think they both did it, was pretend they were pulling a quarter from my ears. And suddenly a quarter would appear and they'd let me keep it. I loved coins. I loved going to the store. And once, my next memory is playing in the playground with all these different children. And they were children that I was going to kindergarten with. And I loved kindergarten. They had no rules. None. There's one rule. Don't jump off the counters. That's all. That's the only rule I remember. And I remember my teacher's name, Miss Pearl. Miss Pearl had the same name as my auntie, Pearl. And Miss Pearl was very kind. And she had one rule: you don't jump off the counter. It's dangerous. But this boy, he just kept jumping off the counter. I shook my head. I didn't like the naps at kindergarten, we would all have these naps after lunch on a mat. We were all lined up, our mats in this kind of, well, in the kindergarten, they moved the chairs, and we would lie down, and they dimmed the lights. I didn't like having naps in kindergarten. Nothing happened. I just didn't like to have them. Why would I want to go to sleep? I said. It didn't make sense. And my next memory, though, it wasn't, I don't think it was on a school day, because I wouldn't have been able to leave the park. I think it was on a weekend. We, the children, were all playing on the swings and teeter-totter and a metal merry-go-round, which was my favorite toy in any playground. That and monkey bars. But I had the urge to treat them all well. I wanted them to have candy. And I went into my apartment, and there was $1 on my mom's dresser, and I took it. And I went to a store that was a long way away. I remember walking and thinking how far it was, further than I thought. I think it was, I don't remember. But I finally got there, and there was a Chinese man. It was a dark store. It could have been brighter. It felt very dark. But there was candy everywhere. But I didn't know what to buy them. I wanted them to have the same thing so that nobody would fight. I found fudgicles. I loved chocolate ice cream. So I bought a box of 12 fudgicles. And it only cost me $1. And I ran home so they wouldn't melt. And I don't think they did. I don't remember feeling they melted. I remember giving them out to my friends. My next memory we moved. We were in a new apartment. It was called Marathon Court. It was in Coquitlam. And there were 2 or 3 levels. And we lived on the 2nd level. And you had to walk up a flight of stairs. The stairs were indoors, but you'd immediately, as soon as you walk in, those stairs belong to the apartment that you live in. So it was our family stairs when you open the door. And you walk upstairs and you're in a living room and sort of kitchen off to the left. And just beyond the living room is a balcony. And my mom's bedroom was on the other side of the staircase. And then there was a bathroom. And then another bedroom. Although I don't remember it much. I was sleepwalking one night. I was going down those stairs and out the door. My mom was awake and she popped her head over the railing and looked down at me and asked where I was going. And I remember turning around and looking at her. And I said, I'm going to find Candy at Diane's. Diane was my babysitter after school. I was in grade 2. I was in grade 1 in the other apartment. I just remembered because I remembered Mrs. Harris in grade 1, and I remember in grade 1 being very excited about Halloween costume where I could dress up like a princess and waiting for my mom to bring the costume for a Halloween party at school where there was very little joy. But this was exciting. I picked out the princess costume for Halloween. And my mom said she would bring it. But she came late. And I don't think I got to wear it. She worked She was a bookkeeper. And I remember writing the IQ tests and doing it so quickly because after we finished our booklet, we were allowed to go outside because she wanted the room quiet. So I wanted to hurry to go outside. And I remember Mrs. Harris slapping me on the back of the head once for something. Those are the memories of grade 1. But there I was now, leaving this apartment called Marathon Court, and my mom waking me up in a sleepwalk. My grandmother was an angel. She brought over gifts to me. She gave me these 2 pictures for my bedroom wall. They were in the shape of octagon. It was kind of a plastic frame, right? And they were octagon frames, brown. And it was the boy and girl, the blue boy and the pink girl in each. And they were pretty famous prints in the 60s. Blue boy, look it up, maybe. But she gave me also a manicure set, a red pouch. And I remember having a friend over once, and she stole my manicure set. And I went into the kitchen. It was a very small kitchen. And I told my mom that she took my manicure set, and she was still there. And it was like my mom didn't want me to make waves. So she took it. My next memory there was going to school and really not liking it, and getting detention. It was grade 2, which I failed. And the teacher gave me a detention once. Well, lots, but this time she went home and forgot about me. And it was at 4 o'clock. The janitor came and he asked me what I was doing there. And I said, the teacher told me to stay. And he said, get out of here. So I ran home. I knew I was late. Or to the babysitter, maybe. I don't know. Nobody said anything. I wasn't in trouble. Except in my mind, I felt like a bad girl, really. I really did, but I can't remember what I did, you know? But I really felt like a bad, guilty girl. And one day I was outside of this apartment. There were no playground there. It was on a road and a driveway that was on a hill. And there was a grassy area in the front. And in these apartments, there was several buildings. And I was in front of the second building from mine because I saw a Tonka truck, a Tonka truck, a yellow Tonka truck, just sitting there on the grass, a child's toy. It was all by itself. There was construction going on. This was a toy Tonka truck, but there was construction going on in those apartments. In the basement, they were making new apartments. And I know this because when I was playing with the Tonka truck, right there in the grass, a man came up to me and I instantly felt fear and guilt for playing with something that didn't belong to me. I was in trouble and I knew it. But he was kind of nice. And he said he'd never seen a little girl before. And I was afraid again. I thought, well, that's odd. Because I looked down over the road to the other alley. I saw somebody over there, a little girl, walking up. I said, there's one over there. And I pointed to her. She was far away. He wasn't making sense. And he said, come with me. And he took my hand and we walked into the apartment building. And I was very afraid because I didn't want to be in trouble. But when we got downstairs, we were in this big room, and it had no drywall. And the man just turned to me, and he said, "I'd never seen a little girl before. So I will give you 25 cents if you pull your pants down." Now, I wasn't willing to do that. I said, "No, thank you." And he asked a few times. I said, "No, no, thank you." And then he said, "I will give you $2 if you let me pull my pants down." And my eyes furrowed again, confused. Anybody could pull their own pants down if they wanted. But I didn't want to see, so I didn't want his $2. I said, "No, thank you." And then he walked me back upstairs. There's no one around, no other construction worker, just that Tonka truck. A toy, a yellow, it was out of place. When I was leaving, though, he gave me the quarter. I didn't do anything. I kept the quarter for 2 steps, and then I threw it at the Tonka truck. I didn't want it. And I ran home up those stairs. And my mom, well, now she appears to be putting makeup on in her bedroom. She had a dresser with a mirror. So she was standing there putting this makeup on at her dresser. And I sat on her bed. I approached her very gently. And I said, "Mom," and then she interrupted me and said she needed me to take an envelope to the mailbox. Oh, I was so afraid to go back out. I was petrified. But I had to. It was a big envelope, one of the paper-sized envelopes, and brown envelope. So I did it really quickly. It was down by where I was, and I just ran as fast as I could there and back. And then I sat on her bed. She was still putting her makeup on. And before she could get me to do anything else, I told her about what the man said and did. I was embarrassed, and I didn't want to hear those words in my head he said. And I didn't want to be afraid. You know, the words, pull down pants, all that, it didn't feel right. It didn't add up. And I felt my mom should know. And she looked at me and she shook my shoulders. She said, "What are you talking about? You were just 2 minutes. You just went to the mailbox. Nothing happened." And I said, "It was before the mailbox." I felt she didn't believe me. But she did call the police. There was somebody new there, my mom's boyfriend. His name was Dave. And she ended up marrying him, and he became my stepfather. But he was sitting on an armchair near the balcony, reading the newspaper. And he didn't move. Like, he just sat there, watching, shocked at the activity. But he didn't move. The police did come, and they searched the whole area, everywhere. And they couldn't find him. I always got the feeling they didn't believe me. Today, I wonder if that was not an angel preparing me. Because I wasn't harmed. And it was a good lesson. Or I noticed throughout my life I could be emotionally and sexually abused. But I have never been violently, physically abused. Ever. By anyone. And I was with a lot of physical women beaters. But they never touched me. It's like they stopped short. Like the guy in the construction apartment there. Something stops them. So, anyway, my real dad was in jail a lot for, now I know, writing checks to people when he didn't have money in the bank. And My mom hated his guts. She really, really, really hated him. I think she was hurt, really hurt. But she thought she hated him. And she took a lot of her anger out on me. And I reminded her of him, she said. I didn't mind that. But one time I was at my cousin's, which is my father's sister's house. Oh my gosh, that house was joy for me. It was not good for my cousin, apparently, but I loved it there. They were rich, 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 rich. And my cousin had everything, everything. She had piano lessons and she lived, what was it called? She lived in Lynn Valley, North Vancouver, on Sunny Crest Drive or something. It was just, everything about it was heaven. And it was directly across from a park with colorful toys for children to play on. And different kinds of toys, lots of them. And so I don't know where my cousin was, but I went across to the park. I was feeling very lonely. I was sad. And I was sitting down watching the children in the park. And I saw a father holding the hand of his daughter in the park. And I felt this immense loss. Where was my dad? Where was my dad? I was jealous. But I really enjoyed the company of two of my cousins. My cousin Debbie, who lived there, she was 1 year older than me. And then we had another cousin from Uncle Hilliard, the uncle who pulled quarters from me. That he had 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl, Diane. Diane later died at 40. I didn't know her. Only as a child did I know her. She had children, but lived away, somewhere in British Columbia on a lake. But we didn't mingle for some reason. She was the fourth cousin, girl cousin, because there was me and Debbie, and then Jewel was another aunt's daughter, but they were much younger. So for now, my mates were Donna, Uncle, or Auntie Verna's daughter, one of her two, and Debbie. And we spent a lot of time together, going to each other's birthday parties. And when our parents would be, drinking together, they would get carried away, and we basically could do what we wanted. Debbie and I ran away a lot, but we always went back. But we would fantasize. We went on a couple of dangerous roads. But nobody ever hurt us. I failed grade 2, but we moved with Dave into a house in a cul-de-sac called Suncrest Drive in Burnaby, off Patterson or Peterson. But it was like a crest and a safe neighborhood. I had friends, and we went to each other's birthday parties. There, there, there was not too much trouble for me in school. I was a year older, and I found it came easier. I went to Sunday school in a house on the crest. In this basement, they had a couple of different Sunday schools for children that I really enjoyed going to. We were given free Bibles. One time, I walked outside, and the boy that came from the house with the Sunday school walked up to me, and he said, "My dad died." Oh, I'm so sorry. But after that, there was no more Sunday school there. My Aunt Verna on my dad's side, well, my mom had no siblings, so they're all my dad's side. And my mom really got along with them well, even though she hated my dad. She was constantly at my auntie and uncle's. And she would always talk bad about me. It was like she wanted them to hate me. I felt they loved me, but they always, all my life, they held back from a distance. I think it's because my mom didn't like me. And she told them what I did and how bad I was whenever I was. as I look at um, that grade, I remember being extremely lonely and losing friends, unable to make friends. They weren't my age. I was playing tetherball a lot by myself and marbles. I was always playing by myself in grade 3. Next door to our house, they had a big garage full of junk, toys and things just sitting there, never getting used. I couldn't believe it. I was sitting there like a purse, a white toy purse. I don't know if it was real or a toy purse, but it made a great toy for me because I love to dress up. And like, I begged my mom for tap dancing lessons so I could have the tap shoes and hear myself walk on tap shoes like you do with TV. You hear people walk with tap, you know, click, 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 click. I love that sound, and I wanted to wear them on my feet. And the only way to get that sound was to take tap dancing lessons. And in this garage, this white purse was standing out to me very loudly, I must say. And one day, I knew it was wrong. I knew. I walked over and took it. And I hid it from my mother. But I just wanted to pretend. That's all I wanted to pretend, play and pretend. But one day I made the mistake of bringing the purse with me to tap dancing lessons. And my mom saw it in the back seat of the car on the way home. And she asked me where I got it. And I just remember being in serious trouble and being just like my dad. And my mom hates liars and cheats and thieves. It was a constant theme. We moved again to Surrey, British Columbia, on 144th Street. And the school, the elementary school, believe it or not, you can look it up, was called Mary Jane Shannon Elementary. Mary Jane. Mary Jane is, oh, whatever. And it was it was an older street with potholes and a dark, dim street, really. but it was fairly safe. Across the street, a little girl named Elaine was my friend, and she had no mother. I couldn't believe it. Her father was raising her and her brother. This was so foreign to me. I befriended her because I, I felt so sorry for her. She was dirty and chubby and had no mother. We were in the same grade. Grade 4. And we were in a new type of educational system called open area or something, where they joined 4 classrooms together. Open with 4 teachers in each corner of the room. It was now one room. And I think my teacher's name was Mrs. Bellings. But sometimes Mrs. Reynolds would come over and teach a class. So they were switching around. I had all the teachers, but the same class. And the grades were different. I think there was grade 4, 5, and maybe just 4 and 5, maybe 6. One day, Elaine and I did not want to be there, and we tried to get ourselves sick by running around the field screaming so we'd get sore throats and could go home. We moved to North Delta, British Columbia for grade 5. By then, my sister was born. She was born when we lived on Suncrest Drive in 1968, with Dave being the father. But I was pushed out of her life, other than I did get up for her feedings. I fed her bottle in the middle of the night. And it was during that age, I was 8.5, I started cooking. I was really a good helper. I was in trouble all the time, always screamed at by my mom. She screamed at me, screaming, screaming, screaming. But there we are now on 144th in Surrey and moving to North Delta now. To 119A Street. I even remember the address. 11928 119th Street. I think. It's weird with the 119. It was a really nice brand new duplex with 4 big bedrooms on 2 levels and a carport and a huge backyard. There was a little school called Kennedy School, very old structure. And that is where I finished grade 4. That's as high as the grades went. After that, I had to go to Hellings. So it was Kennedy Junior to finish grade 4, and then I went to Hellings for 5. I started babysitting in grade 6 and 7. I was a year older, remember. And I had a lot of experience because my brother was born in that duplex, or, well, we lived there. David Arthur. I do remember his. I felt so close to him. I really had to look after him a lot. And so I was very attached to David. My sister was very spiteful, a lot like my mom. She would act like my mom and talk to me like my mom. Not nice. This is when I stop and I wait for your reaction. Because my story is hard to tell from there on in. I have a complex case of PTSD, I guess, if you want to put a label. And I am very careful to not trigger myself and to take my time. I think this is working, where I'll do this in parts. And also for your protection, I ask you to not emotionally react because you don't know my end. I ask you not to judge my story with your emotions or your, it's, do not react, please. It's better we all observe someone more than react until we know the whole story. Because you don't know the end. And if you pour your heart out to me, meaning you're very, very sad and empathetic because you feel my pain and you want to express that, I'm going to ask you to, as an empath, to not feel that pain right now, to just put it on hold and observe, listen without your emotion, moving forward. I think that's a pretty good protection, is to observe and not emotionally react. If you want to hear any more, I guess, I'll wait for your signal because, to be honest, I don't work anymore. I'm not trying to help. I just want to get my story out. That's all. And the way I feel. And this is my purpose to record this, is to get it out. And I have a severe case, of course, of complex post-traumatic stress. I won't call it a disorder. I mean, it's just the way it is. But I do know how to take care of myself. And I want you to know that I'm okay. And I will be okay. And stay tuned for part 2 if you want. Dedicated to the one I love.